This is the Living Library series. This is conversation number 5 or 6. I'm not quite sure which it is at this point, but I'm with Michelle Bunting. And those of you who have been following this journey, Michelle is part of our Exploring Integrity group. So, anybody watching this, if you are a member of the Karmic Margin Call Project Time Bank or are thinking about becoming a member, all of the time that you spend watching these Living Library conversations, you can redeem as an hour that you serve. So that's an hour that you receive for yourself that you can use for a service from somebody else within the network. So I always put that disclaimer right there, right at the beginning, so that we understand that there is a benefit, there is a value in getting to know each other and getting to know our members. So Michelle, I told you before we started this recording that these conversations are really spiritually centered. So the conversations that we've, oh, over there. The conversations that we have are really focused on our spiritual journey, our spiritual lives. And my role is I'm the reader of your book. You are the book. And we're just going to go with a basic question. Michelle, when you think of spirituality, what has your spiritual journey been like? What has been some of the greatest discoveries you've made in your spiritual journey so far?
I feel like I have been making a journey into conscious awareness. I feel like there, for a large portion of my life, I was in a structure that was constructed from a set of perspectives and belief systems, and my lens, my view of the world was through those perspectives. And a lot of those perspectives were not true. So for me, the spiritual journey is moving through levels of awareness to ultimately experience closer and closer levels of the authentic self. And that's a process. That's not a destination. And I don't think it's a destination that anybody is going to really achieve um, before they transition back home out of these bodies. I think it's I think it's a process that is a lifelong process. So then you just achieve levels of awareness of the self based on experiences that you have and based on relationships that you form, and also based on a willingness to evaluate if the original perspectives were actually true, and then also put them through the filter of answering the question, does it serve me? Does it allow me to be the expanded version of who I am or not? And those are difficult places to go, because you have to question everything and you have to be willing to be uncomfortable. Um, I think with seeing parts of yourself that could be different and still love yourself without judgment through that ongoing process, because I think we were all conditioned at an early age to be conditional. Of course, we had to be, that's normal. We were all children at some point. We all detrimentally relied upon the adults in our life for, the basic needs, food, shelter, um, clothing. Intuitively, we understood that we had, in order to feel that, we had to please them. And that is normal, and that is true, and that is right, because we're not able to be self-sufficient as a 6-year-old. We're not going to be able to really take care of our basic needs at 9. So when you look at the construct of what we all had to assimilate, and each from a different lens, we came into different families, different religions, different cultures. So when we all had to assimilate those perspectives of the previous generation who got it from their former generation. So, so we're all facing the same issues of generational stressors, generational traumas, generational woundings. And then for me, the journey has been to say, okay, I get that that's normal. I'm not going to judge that. We all experience that, but now what do I do with it? And so my journey in the second half of my life has been about deconstructing those perspectives in a way that allows me to be as gentle as I can be. Um, but I think the largest part of that is facing the fear and the darkness that has to reside in all of us, because we were talking earlier about the balance in nature. There's a masculine and a feminine. There's a yin and a yang. There's, the sky and the earth. There's positive and negative polarity. And I think that when we start judging what is necessary to have that balance, we've kind of separated ourselves from each other. And so one of the things that I've been working on is how to love the darkness. That's a bit of an interestingly sometimes rough journey, because how do you love something that doesn't feel good? How do you, like, genuinely, not just talking the talk, but how do you allow your heart, this electromagnetic creator, to actually feel love for something that feels so stinky? Like, how do you do that? Um, so I feel like I've been that's now where I am, is kind of, because if we're afraid to look at our own darkness, if we're afraid of that, then we're afraid of ourselves. And if we're afraid of ourselves, then we can't possibly really fully love ourselves unconditionally. And if we can't do that, then it's going to be really impossible for me to extend that to you. So I have to be able to do this work so that I can interact with you and the world in a way that is much more pleasing for me, that's more peaceful, that's more happy, that's more joy. It all depends on this and me learning to integrate me, and taking accountability for that and taking responsibility for that, and not burdening you with that responsibility, which of course is unfair. And it's not your job, and it's not why you came here. You came here to do the same thing for you. And that has to be honored, and you're allowed to do that in whatever way you want to express yourself. So for me, although that might have been a long way around, that's what it means for me.
Thank you, Michelle. What's really a life for me, just taking that in, and I'm taking a moment to to really be with and integrate what you have just offered here. We were talking before the recording started also about that dynamic, that polarity dynamic between structure and freedom. You had alluded to kind of like the masculine energy being the structure, like the sky, and the feminine energy being like the changes in the weather, the wind, the rain,
Yes.
everything like that. Um, what I have been noticing, especially in looking at the culture at Circle of Miracles and looking at other spiritual and religious cultures, it seems like to me, and I wanted to get your impression about this, is that the religion, the fundamentalist religion, is almost like creating those structures that I feel are not true or relevant anymore. And it's the spiritual, it's the authenticity, the authentic spiritual expression that seems to be pushing up against those, that barrier and that structure. I wanted to ask a little bit about your background. So you said in the second half of your life, it's about deconstruction. What was the first half of your life like? Was there any kind of religious or cultural influences that you were questioning? Just would like to learn more about
Yeah.
that, about you.
Yeah, that's been a journey. So when I was born, and I just want to say that before I answer the question, I feel like that question that you just put out is very relevant, especially right now, as being a part of the old construct. But I also think it's relevant because it's such a difficult thing to talk about, not from the people who want to talk about, but I think from the people who don't want to be challenged on it because it's become a part of their identity. So I had a very interesting path through religion. When I was born, I was immediately as a baby baptized a Catholic, of course, because that's what my family did. I would not say that they were very religious. But when it came to the important things like that, then those things were observed. Those traditions were observed. I can tell you that I was never forced to go to a mass. I did go to mass though, because all of my other friends were a lot of them were Catholic, and I was a bridesmaid in many of their weddings. So they would have mass weddings, and so that's where I, the up and down and the kneeling and the thing on the tongue and all of that, and I was happy to do that. It didn't bother me. Then later on, my dad became best friends in Germany, I think with his commanding officer, who was a Latter-day Saint, a Mormon, and really just thought highly of his integrity, of his character, the way he provided that containment for his family. He really liked the viewpoints that he had, and they became very close friends. And for many, many years, our families, even though they didn't serve together anymore, we would still spend time together once a year. They would drive up. They had a lot of children. I think they had like this big suburban. And so then he started taking us to the Latter-day Saint Church. And I went there for a few years in high school. Yeah, for a few years in high school. Um, and there came a point, I remember I was in college, and I wasn't going anymore to church. I sensed it just wasn't my thing. It wasn't a place that really resonated with me. It felt like there was a lot of rules that were tied to me being identified as a good person. So that's where I got my first real taste of a religious construct. And I remember that one day I was walking downtown. I had to get something from one of the local businesses, and I ran into, I think it was an elder of the church. I'm so far removed now. I don't even remember the titles. Somebody that had a position, let's say it
Mhm.
that way.
Maybe a bishop,
And
possibly.
right, and a nice man, a nice man. So you know how short I am, right? So if you can just get this visual, it's just kind of funny. I think he was probably like 6'8". So you can imagine this encounter on the street. I'm here. I'm looking up, and he's just a really nice man. And he's like, we miss you. You need to come back to church because, you want to be able to earn your ability to go to the temple so that you can talk to God. And the earning of the right to go into a perfectly white, pristine building where no one else is allowed to really go in with you, maybe except the spouse that you're marrying, or it's a very high standard. Like you have to meet a bar to be worthy of that. And I remember, I can look back now. At the time, I didn't realize what was happening, but I can look back now and understand that in that moment, my soul had a moment. And I looked at him, and I don't know exactly where it came from, but I said, I don't need to earn myself into a conversation with God. There's nothing I have to do. I don't have to go to a particular building. I can actually have conversations with God anywhere I am. Now, I didn't know why that was true, but it was almost like my soul was like, move over, Michelle. I'm going to have this conversation. Right. And I I remember I felt this burst of authenticity probably for the first time in my life. And I knew that what I was saying was true, even though I may not have had the maturity to understand why it was all true. I just knew that everything that was coming out of my mouth was true. And he was shocked because then, of course, here's this little college girl, right, saying, I can have a relationship with God anytime I want, anywhere I want, in any moment I want, and I do not need your permission, right? And so for him, it was just like, what do you do with that? And so he didn't know what to do with it. And very pleasantly, we told each other it was very nice to see each other again. And I did my business in town and I went home to see my dad. And I told my dad what I did. So I didn't want him to hear it on the street, right? I wanted to let him know about the encounter and what my position was. And my dad was always somebody who actually wanted me to um, kind of always be my own self so I felt very comfortable telling him that I had done something that might displease him. And I remember when I told him that, he smiled and he kind of looked away and he said, okay. And I'm in college now. I want to go on and see my friend and I want to do the things that college girls do. So I didn't think anything of it. And I walked on, roll it forward. I got married. I had two children. They were very young. And I was feeling like I wanted to, I don't know, incorporate more spirituality in my life. So I went to a First Baptist church and I kind of liked it there. I liked that it was different. There was music. There was singing. That was nice. The people seemed kind of nice. That, all surface level things, of course. And, every now and then I'd hear something the energy didn't resonate with me, like hell and punishment and judgment. Um, I didn't like that. That didn't feel good for me. But I mean, you know, it still felt very conditional. It felt like the thrust of the message was that you have to live your life in a certain way to go to heaven. And it kind of felt similar to the last thing, you know, um, where there were conditions, which, of course, that message keeps you in a place of unworthiness because you're not going to be perfect. And you were not meant to be perfect. You were meant to be this classical mess that's out there enjoying life and creatively expressing yourself and falling in love and getting hurt, you know, not always making the best decisions, and that is who we are. So for there to be constructs that say, no, you have to be this way. No, you have to do that way. Now, I'm not saying that I'm encouraging people harming other people. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that anything that implies or delivers some sort of message or attack on your worthiness, on your ability to love yourself just as you are, perfectly imperfect, making mistakes, learning from them, anything that says you're not worthy because of what I feel is a divine journey, that is not an energy that resonates with the unlimited potential of the human soul because we learn from our mistakes. It cannot be wrong to make them. We learn from the places where we discover our pain. So it can't be bad that it's in there. We learn from our darkness because we are the balance in nature. We're both positive and negative. And it has to be okay that sometimes I do fall into judgment. Sometimes I think the things that other people do are really stinky. And I like to be able to say that. And I don't want to suppress that about myself. But if somebody says that I'm wrong for even having a thought, that somehow my worthiness and my value as a human being is now diminished because I didn't meet your bar, I don't want your bar. I'd rather be myself. And if you're not okay with me the way I am, I accept that. And I think you're allowed to have your opinion. My job is to find a way to love you when you don't love me. That's my job. That's what I see my journey as being. And that's a difficult road to do because, we are human beings. We are made up of, the balance in nature, the both the masculine, the feminine, the judgment and the love, the fear and the joy. So um I I think that's a good thing. So for me, I will be very honest with you, and I have not shared this with a lot of people. I have been finding ways to leave the construct. What ways can I choose to no longer participate
Mm,
in the
mm,
construct that has been created as control mechanisms to keep us in a sense, in a place of feeling devalued,
yeah.
in a place where, someone's going to tell you how to be a man. So someone who's going to tell you that what you feel is right in your body is wrong, and the same for me as a woman. Um, that construct is no longer healthy.
Right.
And I think people are feeling it. I remember I was watching this YouTube video. I can't remember who it was, one of the thought leaders I was watching, and he was having a conversation with a pastor
Hmm.
in a church. And they were having a very enlightened conversation about what love really is and how
Hmm.
love is not adequately portrayed, not only in the Bible, but in many texts where fear is promulgated, right? And so he asked the pastor, he said, why don't you're in a position of leadership, why don't you educate people? Do you know what he said?
Mm,
He said, because then I wouldn't have a job.
wow. Mm,
That's deep to me.
mm-hmm.
That
Mm-hmm.
means your job has now changed because
Mm-hmm.
you are changed. That was a good job for you then, but now you've reached a new level of awareness. You've integrated what love really is and what it is not.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't tell anybody because of fear, which is okay, by the way. Fear of what people will think, fear of the unknown, fear of what am I going to do if I don't do this job. All of that is relevant, but that is the journey.
Mm-hmm.
So I find that these kind of conversations that we're having are to encourage people that you are going to have choice points where you can make decisions from fear and you can make decisions from love.
Mm-hmm.
And anything that is not love is fear.
Yeah.
So that's why I think we're all on the hero's journey. I don't believe in constructs anymore that have been set up for us to promulgate the idea of people pleasing and group mentality and um, promulgating that you're not worthy if you don't meet my criteria. You're of less value. And not only are you less than, I have set up a construct to make sure that you know it. And I'm going to make everyone else afraid to be you.
Mm,
So they're
mm,
going to stay in the construct.
wow.
And
Mm-hmm.
that is slavery. That
Yes.
is a soul slavery that has been designed. Now, when you ask me what I think about religion, I think about the Sumari tablets. I
Mm-hmm.
think about the translations that are available on Google that anybody can read.
Mm-hmm.
And I welcome them to do their own research and discover that, very interestingly, all of the religious doctrines are almost word for word copied from an instrument that was recorded, like, I don't know, 35,000 years ago.
Now, are
And
these
so
the
then
emerald tablets? Are these the emerald tablets you're
yes,
referring to? Okay. Mm-hmm.
yes. And
Mm-hmm.
then the question becomes, who wrote that?
Mm-hmm.
Who wrote that? And where did that come from? And what were they trying to tell us? And I find the origin of all of our cultures very interestingly. The people who wrote that information, the wisdom that is actually in there, I'm not talking about the portions of it that were put in different religious doctrines in
Right.
a distorted way. I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking if you actually look at what was recorded 35,000 years ago. And by the way, it was brilliant to etch it in stone because
Hmm.
paper wouldn't have survived,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
So I think it's interesting that they understood their power. I think
Hmm.
it's interesting that they knew that as creators, that harnessing this energy of creation that we all are, that's in everything. It's in the trees, it's in the water, it's in ourselves, this connection to divine source energy that which has created universes and galaxies and is the same energy that is in us. I think it's interesting that the construct has moved us so far away
Hmm.
from knowing who we are, but the people that wrote those tablets,
Hmm.
they knew exactly who they were. And I love the power moves that they made when they said, I am creating for all time.
Yeah.
You're creating for all time? Like all time that exists in perpetuity, that's how long your creation is going to last. Like people here, we're creating houses, we're creating careers, we're creating jobs, money, we want, a relationship. No, they were creating for all time. And
Right.
if you look at what they created then over 35,000 years ago, they created a structure of enslavement.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that structure is still here, and
Yeah.
we are all living in it, and we are still the slaves. The codicil is that humanity is ascending,
Hmm.
and those old constructs designed to keep us mental, physical, and spiritual slaves,
Hmm.
that's not working for us anymore.
Oh no.
That's not happening. I'm not participating in that. And so that's my view on it, that if someone is going to take a vociferous position on the energies of religion, I for myself, I don't want to engage you in that conversation until you've done your homework too. Now, when you've gone back and you've looked at the Sumeri tablets, then we can have a conversation. Now we can talk about,
Hmm.
what we think about this and that. But if you just are holding on to an identity
Right. Hmm.
that you're afraid of letting go because you're afraid of the group feeding that everyone's going to do if you step out of the construct and you let everybody see that you're doing that, you don't have the capacity to have that conversation with me because you're too afraid to look at the truth.
Right. Hmm.
I'm okay looking at it and saying, do I believe that? But then when you look at it, you're like, gosh, that's exactly what it says in the Bible that was created all those years later. This is
Hmm.
interesting.
Hmm.
Let me look at this construct now. And and as I started looking at it, I'm like, oh, this was set up to this is the Jedi mind trick,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
I'm I'm in the Jedi mind trick. So
Hmm.
you're going to give me three people to vote for, but you're cloaking it under free will. You have the free will to vote for, to vote for anybody you want. But you're telling me this is all I have.
Yeah.
And the process of itself, and when I started challenging constructs, I started looking at the other ones that were non-religious.
Hmm. Yeah.
So I had to really look at, because I was taught that to be a good person in society, a good person uses her voice
Hmm.
um, for the benefit of her community. A good
Hmm.
person is one that is in service to her community,
Hmm.
and that's our family, and that's where I come from. Horizontally and vertically, we are a family that has placed ourselves in service to our communities. And
Hmm.
so now, more morally, I have been ingrained that in order for me to be a good person, I have to participate in this construct. So
Mm.
I had to go through several months, like I have to ask me, am I still a good person if I don't participate?
Mm.
Am I still me? Yes, because I was me before I became a voter. I was me before I became a mother. I was
Yes.
me before I became a lover. I existed before all of that.
Yes.
So
Hmm.
once I realized that, I said, yeah, I'm not going to do that anymore because I realize that when I am standing in my power, I am using my own voice.
Right.
I am not abdicating the power of my voice to you to speak for me. I
Yes.
am just as powerful as you are, and you are just as powerful as I am. And
Hmm.
we can speak for ourselves.
Hmm.
And so I had to really have that moment where I'm like, I don't care what other people think.
Hmm.
I am not going to participate in this structure anymore
Hmm.
because it does not mean I am good. It does not mean anything. It only has the meaning that I give it.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so that was very hard because, of course, all the good people around me were still participating in the structure, and they
Right.
still are today. And here's the thing, they are good people if they
Hmm.
participate in the structure or if they don't.
Right. Hmm.
But not everybody can say that. Some people are still like, oh, well, no, you're only good if you're still participating in what we have been taught is moral.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I am able to give that unconditionalism, say, to someone else. It's like, are you voting today? No, I'm not. But I think it's fine that you are,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
But that's not something that can be reciprocated. That is so
Right.
alien and that I'm so comfortable with it, not being in the structure.
Hmm.
But now I'm learning, moving through different levels of conscious awareness, that there is nobody in the world that can more powerfully represent you than you.
Exactly. Yes.
There is nobody in the world that you need to abdicate your authority to,
Hmm.
unless you think that they're going to do a better job than you, than representing you. And that is not true.
Right.
Right or wrong, good or bad, you are fully capable of communicating for yourself, unclogging your throat chakra, and telling the world what you like and what you don't like.
That's right.
Now, that's what I believe, but I'm what you call, what do they call that? What do they call
Heretic.
that? Right? So I like the phrase spiritual, but not religious.
Yeah.
I'm probably not a good person to ask about old paradigms and old constructs that are designed to keep humanity in enslavement.
Hmm.
Um, Now, I may not have much that I can do about the constructs. They're in place and they're here, and people are participating in it. Um, what I can do is I can come to do what I came to do, which is live my life,
Hmm.
find my own voice, speak my own power into my world, and still love everybody else that is in their places on their journey and understand that they're not going to be able to love me back. They're not going to be able to love me back in a way where I feel supported, but I have to be okay with me in
Hmm.
order to move in. And maybe there'll be one person, there might be 99 people that listen to this recording and say, she's insane. And I'm okay with that. Right. But there might be one to say, oh, wait, is it enslavement? Let me go look at those tablets. Let me find out where all of this construct, these people created for all time. And they
Yeah.
said it. I am creating a structure for all time. It didn't even occur in my brain
Yeah.
that we could actually, we had that same power that they did,
Hmm.
that we too could create for all time.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
that's what I want to do. I want to create constructs for all time. So
Right.
now it's like, what constructs do I want to create? Oh, I want to create freedom.
Yeah.
I
I'd like
want,
I'd like to add something to this too, because what you're saying is, with these unconscious contracts that we've been entered into, having conversations like these make those unconscious agreements conscious so that we can renegotiate them. And besides, Michelle, I want to tell you, most of the people I talk to are completely aligned with what you're saying. So,
oh,
especially when you look at the color of law and you look at natural law, the way society had acted under natural law as opposed to common law or even contract law or business law.
which is
These
very different,
constructs
very,
are
very different than
very
natural
different.
law.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So these constructs have been set up to usurp sovereignty and give it
Yes.
away to an authority.
Yes.
So, but the moment we start to question that and observe that, we bring those, that contrast together under natural law, and begin to make those unconscious agreements conscious so that we can make more conscious agreements with those who are aware of their sovereignty and not giving
Yes.
their sovereignty away and understanding the constructs of authority, and how to work within them, but not be completely consumed by them.
Right.
So,
In but not of. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. That's one of the interesting things I had to find out is I didn't realize that each one of us, that our social security numbers are Dun and Bradstreet numbers.
hmm
I didn't know that. Why am I why am I a Dun and Bradstreet number? I understand why a corporation is.
hmm
I understand why an LLC is. Why am I a Dun and Bradstreet number? Then as a human being, because that's almost like a commodity,
yeah.
right? So then I had to look into what does that mean?
hmm
And then I had to move into the place where I understood what a birth certificate really was.
hmm
And then I had to understand what that tool is to the matrix.
hmm
And then I had to understand that that birth certificate had been assigned a dollar value and
yeah.
that you can look this up on the internet. Like that I could look up my name on the internet. I can go to that website, plug in my thing, and I can
hmm
find out the dollar value that has been assigned to me that someone else is making money off of.
exactly. Yeah.
Right? Now we come back into the matrix of enslavement,
hmm
right? So, which they created for all time. I'm not even mad at them. The people 35,000 years ago who
hmm
created this unthinkable system of enslavement for
yeah.
humanity. I'm not mad at it. I'm like, wow. But I know that I'm as powerful as they are. So
hmm
now my job is to figure out what can I create for all time that's going to break your system,
hmm
right? And who else wants to do that?
yeah.
Right? So I don't want to be traded anymore as a
Right.
commodity.
hmm
I don't want them to make money off of me. Actually, I'm looking into ways now on how I can get my money back.
hmm
I would like to use it for the purposes. If I have a dollar value, I'm not mad at it. I'm
hmm
not. But I would rather that money get used for the purposes that I want it to be used for.
hmm
I would like there to be water in places where they're having food sovereignty issues. I
yeah.
would like to use my money that way. If that's
hmm
my value, then I want to have a say in how that's spent.
yeah.
And I don't need to vote for you, Mike Shoeman, to tell me how it should be spent anymore.
Exactly.
And if that
Exactly.
makes me a heretic, then whatever you judge me as, whatever you're labeling me as,
hmm
I'm okay with that. I
hmm
am. I'm okay with that. You like to walk to rock and roll. I like to walk to R&B, but you know what
Yeah.
I mean? We don't have to agree.
Right.
Um, but that's my journey now. The second half is moving into that level of awareness where it's like, where am I really? But in order to do that, now I have to overcome the next level of fear, the darkness that is within
hmm
me and everyone else. I have to become comfortable with it because
hmm
anything that has been designed to be set up as a control system for
hmm
you, for your children, for your family, your friends, the people you love, it's going to keep everybody in enslavement. In order for us to be able to look at the darkness, we
hmm
have to get comfortable with it.
yeah.
We have to be able to understand it and feel compassion for it. We can't match that energy because now we're helping their energy expand, right?
Right.
We have to be able to look at it, understand why it's here, how it's necessary. Of course, there has to be duality. I'm
Yeah.
here to represent the light side. Of course, there had to be you.
hmm
There has to be another side or there's no function for me,
right.
right? So
hmm
I get the function of it. But it's now my journey at this point is being able to see the darkness
yeah.
and to feel that compassion, which is a form of love,
hmm
rise in me because that energy is much stronger
Hmm.
then the energy in the darkness, the negative polarity, and then
Hmm.
use that to create for all time and
There you go.
find my tribe. Where are my people? Who else
Hmm.
wants to be on this side of the polarity? And by the way, there's no judgment for
Hmm.
those that don't. There's no
Right.
judgment who for people who, want to advocate for the current structure and system,
Hmm.
right? No judgment for them, but I'm now more interested in finding my tribe.
Yeah.
It's like, how
Yeah.
are we going to get together and do this? How are we going to deconstruct, the matrix so that we can be in that side of community that releases humanity
Hmm.
um, from this enslavement so that everybody gets to be who they are. I do realize people say, well, you got to have a system in place for the murderers. You got to have a system in place for the rapists. I'm not saying that you don't need it. What I'm saying is that there's a lot of things right now in place that we don't need,
Hmm.
right? And because we are powerful, but you only know that if you're worthy. You only know that if you think you deserve something better in life. You only know that if you are in alignment with your entitlement to your
Yeah.
joy, and that nobody else on the planet is entitled to that, to your joy, but you.
Exactly.
And that's what makes us all equal. I think that's what makes us all
Hmm.
um equal as we're all moving through this together. But
Hmm.
that's just me.
I'm gonna add two things in here. The first thing is this is the perfect conversation for a living library because we're creating a pathway. The first stage is having conversations like this where we give each other the space to expand and to be able to speak our truths. That's what the living library is. Then there's the structure, which is the time banking structure, where we start to understand how much our lives are really worth to the slave masters and how to start to renegotiate that unconscious agreement. And then what this is leading to is implementing regenerative economies where people are valued as equals and not part of this slavery, this psychological slavery system. So this is the perfect
Oh,
conversation for this.
it's not just psychological. I mean, the psychological component is an absolute requirement,
Yep.
because it is you have to be able to train someone psychologically if you're going to get their physical cooperation with it.
Right.
Right. So it's a psychological, yes, but it's also physical and it's
Mhm.
also spiritual.
Very much spiritual. Yes. Hmm.
Right. And so for me, what I've been using a lot, as I'm moving in this direction, is to make sure that when I encounter something in my awareness, I absolutely express, I do not consent.
Hmm.
I do
Hmm.
not consent. I do
Right.
not consent to what it is I'm observing. I do not consent to this. I'm exercising my sovereignty. You no longer have my consent.
Right.
Now I'm going to decide when I consent and do not consent to every single thing you do. Every
Yeah.
time you stick and move, I'm going to declare whether I consent or not. You no longer have me that way.
Hmm.
And I think that's where we all start to really exercise our power. I do not consent. I do it unapologetically, and I do it without fear of your reaction.
Yes. Hmm.
Right? You're a requirement. The darkness is a requirement to be in existence, and it is a part of all that is, and it is necessary. We're in this dimension of duality. We need the balance,
Yeah,
right?
that's natural law. Yeah.
But
Hmm.
at the same time, we can decide what energy we're going to utilize more, which energy we're going to spread in our communities. And there's nothing wrong with deciding
Hmm.
which side of the aisle you would like to be on.
Hmm.
But I know this. I know that on a frequency level, that everything in the universe is sound
Hmm.
and has a sound measurement. And I know
Hmm.
that the frequencies of compassion and love and acceptance and joy are way, way, way higher. They resonate at a much higher frequency than fear,
Hmm.
enslavement.
Hmm.
So, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with those numbers
Yeah.
as well.
Hmm.
And I think that once we can, I don't know what movie it was in, but once you can shed your fear of a thing, is when you are ready to actually deal with that thing.
Right.
And, you know, and we have been trained. So
Hmm.
it's a journey to move into a place where you do not fear the dark, where
Right.
you do not fear anything. You
Hmm.
don't fear judgment, all of the things that come from the dark energies, judgment, hate, war, um, murder, all of the things that do harm to ourselves and to others come from this energy,
Right. Hmm.
right? And so, in order for us to be able to deal with it from a higher frequency, we have to first shed our fear of it.
Right.
And I think that's what you're trying to do here. You're trying to help people get some clarity,
Hmm.
which helps people shed their fear of it.
Right. And all negative emotions, when they have been integrated, they have a positive effect. All feelings, when they're allowed to express
Absolutely.
themselves, will lead back to love. Fear heightens your senses. Anger heightens your sense of justice. Sadness heightens your sense of empathy. So all of these, what we think of as lower vibrating negative emotions, they have a positive effect when they're allowed
Absolutely.
to express themselves, in an environment conducive to that. All feelings will always lead back to love. I do believe that.
That is, I believe that too. 1000% true. Because eventually that energy is going to be alchemized. That energy is going to be transmuted
Yeah. Mhm.
because it's got to move into clarity. It's got to move into that level of wisdom. And
Yeah.
those are higher frequencies than fear, right? So I agree with you 100%.
Great. And
Yeah,
we are getting close to the end of our time, Michelle. That hour went by really, really fast. That's
I
what I call
did, didn't it?
that's what I call Kairos time. So when you're in Kairos time and the energy is flowing, time gets dilated. It
It
goes by very
does.
quickly. Where if you're in Chronos time, Chronos, being the taskmaster, the slave driver, where it's counting every single moment, every single second. The time dilation makes things go by very slowly. And it affects that vibration that we were talking about. The law of vibration kicks in, and our experience of time is subject to that dilation between Chronos and Kairos time. So yeah, this went by very quickly. So I'll just ask you what I normally ask at the end of our group conversations. Is that
Mm-hmm.
what what is most alive for you? Thinking back, just reflecting back on this conversation that we had in the last hour, what is most alive for you that you'll take forward after today?
I think what's most alive for me right now is um, to continue on my path of being able to, from a particular frequency, from a particular emotion, to embrace the the polarity of both sides,
Mhm.
um, and to allow myself to be in situations where the negative polarity can be seen,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
to kind of use those opportunities to practice my energy flow when I'm confronted with the evidence of the negative polarity and the fear,
Mhm.
and to learn to be better on how to bring love to that
Nice.
instead. Um, that's what comes up for me now. That's the part that I'm working on right now,
Mhm.
which for me is a level of self mastery
Mhm.
that I would like to master very quickly. So I tend to like opportunities to practice.
Yeah.
I don't always enjoy those opportunities,
Yeah.
but I know that I'm you have to have the ability to practice in, energetically dealing with the negative
Yeah.
polarity in order to master it. And then when you can do that, then you have reached that level of mastery within the self. So that's what comes up for me. And I hope that, you know, there are people that won't be afraid
Mhm.
of, facing the evidence
Mhm.
of fear in the world, in ourselves and in each other,
Yeah.
and move into that uncomfortable place to practice on how to deal with that. Because if we can do that together from a loving energy, vibration, frequency, then that means that as a collective, we're beginning to master not individuals learning how to move into self mastery, but we're learning how to master that together. And whenever two or more come together, and this I do believe that is an unstoppable force, that is an unstoppable movement. So I hope that our conversation here was able to maybe give someone the oxygen that they need to
Hmm.
double down, because
Mm.
you can get tired doing this.
Oh yeah. Hmm.
This can be something that can make you tired. So I hope that our conversation gave someone permission,
Hmm.
to be who they are, to express who you are in the world, do it unapologetically, because we need more of that energy if
Hmm.
we're going to be able to master the dominion
Yeah.
of the constructs of fear in our world.
Very good. Last question, Michelle. What are you most curious about discovering moving forward here?
I'm wondering how my life is going to change for the better. I already assume that it's going to change in a way that's going
Hmm.
to delight me,
Hmm.
that's going to inspire me, that's going to infuse me with that renewal, that restoration of energies that I need.
Hmm.
And I'm curious to see how all that is going to manifest itself.
Hmm.
Because every time we take that part, let's say we have a ball like this of darkness inside each one of us. Every time we're able to take a little piece of that
Hmm.
and transmute it into light, and then we
Hmm.
come back and we take another piece out of that and
Yeah.
we transmute it, that space that it occupies gets smaller. And when we're able to do that in ourselves, that actually creates in our realities an experience. It opens up potentialities, parallel realities, probable realities. It opens up a whole field of potentialities that were, before you removed that next block of darkness and transmuted it, that was all, those potentialities were blocked to you. But
Hmm.
when you change the energy by transmuting some of the darkness within you
Hmm.
into light, now you opened up an entire other field. And so for
Oh
me,
yeah.
the game show is what's behind curtain number three. So
Nice.
that's how I see it. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you for this, Michelle, and
Thank you.
I'm
Thank you
looking
for
forward to
talking
sharing
with
this.
me. I don't
Hmm.
have a lot of people to talk about this with. I'm grateful
Well,
that
we're
you
hoping
actually
to have
created
more
this.
conversations like this.
Well, I'm grateful that you actually had this and you made the time for it. So really, thank you, Mike.
You're very welcome.